Chapter 1880, The Rise of the Underclass. By Jean felt cold sweat on his back. Li Changgong is too suspicious now and doesn't trust anyone. What he worried most was that the power he had gained through an armed coup would be taken away by others in the same way. Bai Zhan's words made Li Changgong feel that he was challenging his authority. "No, Commander, I definitely don't mean that." Li Changgong stood up, supporting his waist with one hand and placing the other hand on the back of the sofa. "Don't say that Shaolai doesn't have the courage to betray me. Even if he doesn't have the ability to compete with me. This is the Northwest region, and I, Li Changgong, am the king of the Northwest region. Everyone must obey my orders, and no one is allowed to disobey me. Do you understand?" His voice became louder and louder, and his gloomy eyes gave Bai Zhan a feeling of madness. Bai Zhan's throat tightened, and he quickly lowered his head and said, "Yes, Commander." Bai Zhan left the office worriedly. Although he still had many doubts in his mind, he didn't dare to say anything more. "Shaolai, I hope I'm just overthinking it. That guy can't possibly cause trouble. Otherwise, he would be courting death." The next day, Shaolai began to visit his former close friends one by one and say goodbye to them. Shaolai's home was very busy. His wife was directing some soldiers to load up the household items and move them onto the truck. Shaolai personally came to Li Changgong's office to say his final goodbyes to him. Although Li Changgong did not think Shaolai had the courage to rebel, he still warned him with words. Upon hearing these words, Shaolai's heart rose to his throat. Without the slightest hesitation, he knelt down in front of Li Changgong with a thump, holding onto the ground with both hands and resting his head on the floor. "Commander, I'm just an ordinary junior officer. If it weren't for your promotion, I would never be in my current position. I have only one feeling for you, and that is gratitude. My loyalty to you is more unbreakable than the walls of Chang'an." Li Changgong lowered his head and saw Shaolai crawling in front of him like a dog, and his lips curled up with satisfaction. "Okay, I never doubted you. I just want to remind you to be more low-key in the future. Work hard after you go to Umu Town. If you perform well in the future, I will consider transferring you back to the headquarters." Shaolai looked grateful and said loudly, "Thank you, Commander." Seeing that Li Changgong did not doubt him, Shaolai turned and left, his hair already dripping with sweat. He quickly walked out of the building, and his adjutant came over to take him to the military vehicle. Shaolai sat in the back seat and looked up at the ironclad command center building that Li Changgong had built for him. After the invasion of the Wulwan Empire, Li Changgong rebuilt this building for his own safety. Its defense level is higher than before. Li Changgong moved his own room here, as he was very afraid of being assassinated. No matter how strong a fortress is, it can be breached from the inside. After Shaolai left, a car from the Mediterranean drove over from another direction. His stretched limousine was all black, and it was hard to see what was inside. After getting out of the car, he glanced at Shaolai, who was walking away, then hurried up the stairs and walked towards Li Changgong's office. After being informed and getting Li Changgong's permission to meet, he hurried to Li Changgong's office. Commander, I want to report Shaolai." As soon as Mediterranean entered the door, he shouted with gritted teeth. Li Changgong's heart moved, and he looked up at him. "What did you say?" Heidi swallowed and stood straight in front of Li Changgong. "I want to report Shaolai. He once spoke disrespectfully to you, the commander-in-chief, in private. He said that you don't know how to judge people and exiled such an excellent person as him to the border. I will never tolerate such bad behavior from him." Li Changgong sneered. "General Chen, I remember that you and Shaolai both graduated from the Army Officer School, and you were his senior." Heidi hurriedly said, "I have no connection with him. Commander, please believe in my loyalty." Li Changgong had already guessed the reason why Heidi came. He issued a transfer order to send Shaolai to the border, which caused unrest in the army, especially the old commander's former subordinates, who were worried that they would be implicated. Look, Mediterranean immediately came to surrender. However, Li Changgong was not going to let Shaolai die. And keeping him would always be useful. He was not stupid enough to do that. Okay, General Chun, I already know your loyalty. Don't worry, you have been doing a good job in the City Defense Army, and I won't touch you. A look of gratitude appeared on Heidi's face. Thank you, Commander. Li Chonggong likes this kind of fence-sitter very much. He is very smart and easy to use. But he couldn't say that he appreciated the character of such a person. If there's nothing else, just go down. He waved his hand. Mediterranean suddenly came closer in a flattering manner. I have other things to report to you, Commander-in-Chief. Li Chonggong glanced at him. What else? Mediterranean's smile became a little lewd. I am well aware that you have been busy with regional affairs in recent days, so I have found a few women to help you relieve your fatigue. Li Chonggong is 35 years old and unmarried. It's not that he has any health problems, but that at his level, formal marriage is no longer that important. He has already grasped the supreme power, so naturally, he will not be short of women. On the contrary, he is young and strong, and has extremely strong desires. He made no secret of this point, and it could be said that it was a well-known secret among the top leaders of the Northwest region. He has been busy with regional affairs recently, and has been worried all the time that others might do something bad to him. He really needs a good rest. Li Chonggong raised his eyebrows, leaned over, and asked in a low voice, "How is life?" What else could the Mediterranean say? Could it be that he tried it? He smiled and bowed, saying, "I promise I won't let you down. If you are not satisfied, I am willing to accept your punishment." Li Chonggong laughed and rubbed his lower back, where the kidney energy is located. Send the person over here. It was night. Tonight, the two squadrons responsible for defending the streets near the military command center successfully changed shifts. These two units are directly under the jurisdiction of the Mediterranean. After the invasion of the Wulwan Empire, the entire Northwest region's military underwent a major reshuffle. Among the Chang'an City Defense Forces, more than 90% of the soldiers were new recruits who were put on the job at the speed of light after less than a year of training. Under such circumstances, the veterans in the army and the group of senior officers are particularly important. After the era of Great Mutation, the role of mutants has far exceeded that of ordinary thermal weapons. Even a powerful weapon like the god of death of love seems extremely dull in front of an alien of Ypsilon's level. Shaolai has been planning this revolution for a long time. This was just an opportunity that gave him the courage to take action. He studied the rotation map of the Chang'an City Defense Forces every day, and he had already planned what would happen tonight. What's more, Li Chonggong believed that he was invincible in the Northwest region and did not take ordinary soldiers seriously at all. So, they spent almost no effort. Just as Li Chonggong was releasing his long-suppressed hormones in bed, the officers of Shaolai's team had completely taken control of almost all areas outside the command center. The next biggest obstacle is the defense of the command center bunker. Both the defense of the command center building itself and the personal guards directly under Li Chonggong were difficult to break through. Searchlights flashed across the sky in the darkness, and several military vehicles arrived outside the command center building. The air was filled with a solemn atmosphere, but the area near the command center building was particularly quiet. There is always the calm before the storm. Shaolai got off the military vehicle. Tonight, he was wearing combat uniform and was surrounded by a group of trusted subordinates. Their arrival made the guards feel a little strange. Because in recent times, anyone who comes to the command center must first inform the senior management and obtain permission before coming. However, those who came were Shaolai and several senior military officers. Shaolai, in particular, can be regarded as their military idol. An officer hurried down the stairs and saw Shaolai with a strange expression on his face. "General Shao, why are you here?" "This is Wang Sun, a captain in the Royal Guard, with the rank of major." Shaolai walked over, gave him a deep look, and whispered, "We have received intelligence that enemies have infiltrated the military. In order to protect the safety of the commander-in-chief and the people of Chang'an, we must enter the command center building." After Wang Sun met Shaolai's eyes, he nodded silently, and then he made a gesture to the back. The SS soldiers immediately made way. Shaolai led the group of officers, with Wang Sun following beside to escort them, and they entered the command center building without any hindrance. On the surface, Wang Sun has no relationship with Shaolai. However, in reality, he was a hidden chess piece planted by Shaolai next to Li Changgong. Although he was only a low-ranking officer, he had the authority to pave the way for Shaolai. After Shaolai and others entered the command center, he immediately signaled to the people around him and acted according to the plan. Their goal was to force the crazy Li Changgong to step down, not to destroy the city of Chang'an. Therefore, it is necessary to occupy the propaganda window and freeze the command authority of the officers on Li Changgong's side. The collapse of a building is easier from the inside. This is a world made up of people. Orders are issued by the top and passed down layer by layer. Only then can the orders be fully executed and the power of the top be exerted. Once the channel for conveying orders is cut off, it is equivalent to making the top leaders blind, deaf, and dumb. Li Changgong didn't care about these things in the past. Ever since he became Ypsilon, he thought of himself as another kind of creature, a creature that was high above and could look down on other ordinary humans. The longer the time went on, the more he could feel the gap. He naturally believed that in the Northwest region, no one was qualified to challenge his authority and no one could break into his indestructible barrier. So at this time, Shaolai and other officers acted separately, and it only took a few minutes to completely take control of the entire command center building. The whole process was incredibly smooth, even a little magical. Shaolai, along with Di Fei, Chen Jiahao, and others, strode forward. At this time, someone in the building noticed something was wrong. That was the second-generation Sky War God Bai Zhan. When he discovered the abnormalities in various departments of the command center, he came to inquire immediately, but how could those lower-level soldiers and officers understand such complicated things? They are only responsible for following the orders of their superior officers. Shaolai and his companions strode forward, and Bai Zhan quickly rushed down from upstairs, wanting to find someone to ask what was going on. When he saw Shaolai and others, he understood everything in an instant. Shaolai, Di Fei, Chen Jiahao, who allowed you to come in? Bai Zhan pointed at the three of them and rushed over aggressively. Shaolai took a deep breath and narrowed his eyes. The next moment, his body rushed to Bai Zhan like a phantom, and Bai Zhan felt as if his body was hit by a locomotive. With a bang, he was knocked out more than 10 meters away and hit the wall hard. A dagger popped out from Shaolai's right hand, and without any hesitation, he stabbed it directly into Bai Zhan's throat. Cough, cough. Bai Zhan's face turned red. His vocal cords were cut off, and he could no longer make any sound. Shaolai took a half step back. Di Fei and Chen Jiahao came over from the left and right. One of them controlled his hands while the other destroyed the communication equipment on his body. Di Fei put his right hand on Bai Zhan's throat and warned coldly. Stay still. We don't want to kill you. Otherwise, we will break your neck. Bai Zhan realized what these people wanted to do. His face flushed, but he could do nothing at the moment. Shaolai and the others didn't even look at him and continued on their way. Before long, the entire command center building was completely occupied by Shaolai and others. Outside the building, thousands of soldiers arrived in tanks and completely blocked the street. Chang'an City is very large, and before they took action, they had already transferred away most of the troops that were not under their control. For troops from other areas, it would take at least 20 minutes to arrive. What's more, they are heavily armed troops, so their speed will only be slower. So, in the short term, this place has become Shaolai and his team's home ground. However, everyone knows that all this is just a prelude. They solved other problems, but the most difficult one was still how to deal with Li Changgong. What is Li Changgong doing at this moment? He was sweating profusely in a room, and the boredom he felt in recent days could only be rewarded by the release of dopamine through hormones. His hard work time and time again calmed him down a lot. But after it was over, I felt empty again. He thought of many people. Luo Yunfeng, the former supreme commander of the Northwest region, who had once promoted him. Originally, he just wanted Luo Yunfeng's position and had no intention of harming his life. However, Luo Yunfeng could not bear such humiliation and chose to jump from a 20-story building and end his life.
He also thought of Zhang Yi.
I don't understand how that warehouse manager could improve his strength at such a rocket-like rate and leave me, the proud child of destiny, far behind. Li Changgong sat on the edge of the bed, his naked upper body covered with bronze tendons, looking very muscular. He smoked a cigarette, his thoughts drifting away. I don't know why, but I always feel a little uneasy tonight. At this moment, a pair of snow-white arms came from behind and gently stroked his chest. "Commander, what are you thinking about?" The beauty leaned close to his ear with an understanding look. "Do you want to take a break? Rest?" Li Changgong frowned. What a joke. Just when Li Changgong was enjoying himself, the black chariot-level alien's awareness of danger made him suddenly jump up from the bed. He felt a danger approaching. Li Changgong instinctively picked up his double swords from the bedside and then immediately gave orders to the guards around him. What happened? But his inquiry received no response. And at this moment, the door of his room exploded with a bang. A raging fire burned in the darkness, pouring into the room from outside and heading straight for Li Changgong. Li Changgong's heart was pounding, and he finally knew where that uneasy feeling came from. Clang! The sharp long sword was unsheathed, and the explosive power cut through it like a balloon. The shock wave dissipated from Li Changgong. "Who is it?" Li Changgong roared and quickly put on his combat uniform. The wall had been completely blown open, and after the smoke and dust cleared, the figures of Shaolai and others were revealed. They were all wearing the military's dark green combat uniform and looked at Li Changgong with cold eyes. Li Changgong's eyes widened and he shouted angrily, "Shaolai, you bastards, are you going to rebel?" But Shaolai just responded coldly, "The traitor, it's you, Li Changgong." Everyone looked at Li Changgong coldly. They had to do something drastic. No one chose to turn back at this point. Shaolai strode forward and said as he walked, "You seized power by force and then made the Northwest region your own. Fearing that others would surpass you, you wantonly targeted talented people. Li Changgong, you are not qualified." Li Changgong looked at Shaolai coldly. He turned his head to look at the Mediterranean Sea behind him, then sideways to glance at the two shivering women on the bed. He suddenly sneered. "You want to use such a crude method against me? You guys are too naive." He put his hands on the handles of the two long swords. "Even if you control the entire Northwest region, it doesn't matter to me. As long as I take action, no one can stop me. I can kill anyone I want to kill." The officers behind Shaolai glared at Li Changgong on the surface, but they were pretending not to be panicked. They could only look at Shaolai, hoping that this guy would really do what he said. Shaolai also smiled and looked at Li Changgong. "Why don't you give it a try?" Di Fei made a gesture, and the officers jumped down from the tall building without hesitation. Among these officers holding important positions, the weakest one has an ability index of more than 9,000 points. Without sufficient strength, it is impossible to intimidate the current army. However, this battlefield is no longer one they are qualified to participate in. They watched the battle from a distance, while commanding their trusted troops around them to control the situation. 20 minutes later, if Li Changgong's support troops arrive, there might be another bloody battle. Li Changgong stared at Shaolai, narrowed his eyes, and said in a deep voice, "Shaolai, I thought you were a smart man. I didn't expect you to do such a stupid thing. The white chariot challenges the black chariot. The gap in strength between you and me is more than 10,000 points. What can you use to fight me?" Shaolai did not answer this question. He asked back, "You should not forget Commander Luo Yunfeng, right?" When Li Changgong heard this name, his face suddenly darkened. Shaolai continued, "The moment you came to pay your respects hypocritically at his funeral, I made up my mind. Sooner or later, I will make you pay for what you did." He took out 6 grenades with his hands, and black supernatural power emerged from his body like smoke, carrying a terrifying power that made people's hearts flutter. Li Changgong's pupils suddenly shrank, and he realized that Shaolai had been hiding his strength all these years. His true strength is actually not that different from mine. All these years, I've been waiting for an opportunity. Originally, I thought that if you could really be a good commander of a region for the stability of the Northwest region, I would consider letting you go. But you disappoint me so much. A rotten orange is a rotten orange. You are hopeless. As soon as the words fell, the grenade in Shaolai's hand underwent strange changes, and its body shrank as if it had life. Shaolai threw them towards Li Changgong. They screamed shrilly like mice and appeared around Li Changgong in an instant. The next moment, a violent explosion broke out. Li Changgong drew his two swords and slashed hundreds of times in the blink of an eye. All the terrifying power was split apart by him. Shaolai's fist appeared on his left side in an instant and punched his lower back. Li Changgong twisted his body flexibly, but his speed was still slow in the end. Puff! With a dull sound, he was smashed away, breaking the glass on the tall building and flying to the outside world. Li Changgong felt as if his abdomen was hit by a mace and was in excruciating pain. "You're so good, Shaolai." Li Changgong's eyes were red. He paused in midair, took a deep breath, and then let the combat uniform inject medicine to relieve his injuries. When the battle actually started, he realized how bad his current condition was. The two women sent from the Mediterranean reduced his strength and concentration significantly. But so what? He clenched the two swords in his hands. One knife, just one knife. As long as he could hit Shaolai with one strike of his sword, this battle would be completely over. He, Li Changgong, is the will of heaven. Wherever his blade points, everything will be destroyed. Shaolai flew into the air and hovered in midair. My ability, Metal Frenzy, can strengthen all substances, so as long as I want, I can be a Black Chariot-level strengthening mutant, releasing mutant, and the strongest weapon master. Li Changgong, I have followed you for 3 years and have already figured out your abilities. He stretched out his index finger and pointed at Li Changgong's knife. Your blade may be powerful, but if you avoid it, you'll be no threat.